There's all different forms of resilience, and all different ways that people have resilience, and one of them is action. And that was the one that I took on, and that's the one that most of the people in Israel and all of the Jews in the diaspora that are getting involved have taken on. And I think it's actually the right answer. I think it's action. The thing that makes you feel empowered is to act, not to sit here and hopelessly be victims, but to think, what can I do in my capacity to act? And everybody acts differently. You could act by preparing sandwiches and food for the soldiers. You can act by, people were acting by going down and folding the washing of the soldiers, or help, taking in the evacuees. There's all different types of ways of acting, but the way to respond is to act.
I've come to realize it takes extraordinary people to live in this extraordinary place. The pressures, the stresses, the challenges of living in Israel are extreme, and it takes amazing people to find ways of thriving in this environment. And today I have the pleasure of meeting one of these people, Dr. Debra West. She is an Australian Israeli who is a specialist in emergency medicine, and she is here to tell us about her experiences on the 7th of October when she was working as the head of an emergency department in the south of Israel, as dozens and dozens of patients came pouring in on that horrific morning. She entered on Saturday morning and ended up leaving 3 days later. And we're going to hear how she managed those experiences and how she stays resilient, strong, enthusiastic, and optimistic in the face of the most extraordinary stress. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to welcome Dr. West to our program, Conversations That Count.
So first of all, thanks for inviting me to the program. I left Australia in 1994, basically went through school. I'm second generation Holocaust survivor from a Zionistic Orthodox family, and I was very actively involved in B'nai Akiva. After finishing medical school in 1994, as soon as I finished, basically a month after, I came on Aliyah and started my medical career in Israel.
So you arrived at 25 and you were a doctor at that stage. Where did you do your first training?
I trained in Australia in Monash University. I did my year of internship at the Assuta Hospital. I finished in January 1994, and I already started my position in Israel in February 1994, a month later. I had the position already organised from Professor Sam Menahem, who at the time was also an Australian, who at the time was the head of the paediatric department in Har HaTzofim. He's actually also the reason I went into medicine. At the age of 7, he used to pick me up every Sunday and take me to visit the children in the neonatal intensive care, and got me interested in medicine from the age of 7. So It was a real closed circle to start my life as a doctor in Israel in his department.
Amazing. So you came in at the age of 25 to Israel as a Zionist, and obviously from a family background that was passionate about Judaism and Israel. Was it difficult to integrate as a doctor at that stage, having qualified in English in Australia?
Not really, honestly. People were very accepting, they still are, of bad Hebrew, of an Anglo accent. A lot of the terms, most of the terminology is in English. So it really wasn't that difficult, and people were very welcoming. We actually had 3 Australians in our unit, actually four Australians in our unit at the time, which made it easy so that people were familiar with my accents at least. No, I actually think I had a really soft landing.
We, at the moment, are experiencing an absolute tsunami of anti-Semitism around the world. I actually spoke to a friend in England yesterday who's a doctor. She's a geriatrician, and she's interested in coming and living here. Have you got any advice for doctors who might be interested in either making Aliyah or might be wanting to come and serve just to help through this terrible crisis that we're in by supporting Israel's medical system?
So first of all, anybody who's interested, I say come. There was a group of doctors that started up basically a week after October 7 in 2023. They called their WhatsApp group "Those Who Run Towards," obviously, as opposed to "Those Who Run Away." And I just really like that motto, that theme. And it's basically just run towards. There's so much that can be done here. There's so much that needs to be done here. I think that anybody who comes on Aliyah now will be fulfilled. will feel that they're contributing and will contribute. There are, as I said, that it's not such an easy ride. You have to come prepared. First of all, I just actually gave it was in Australia last week with Nefesh B'Nefesh, trying to encourage medical aliyah. And a lot of people ask, where do you start? And I think you start by working out what's going to be your biggest issue, and you resolve that first. Your biggest issue might be that you have a 13-year-old daughter who really needs to fit into the school that she goes into. So you solve that. And once you solve your 2 or 3 biggest issues, which are not necessarily what is it going to be like to be a doctor in Israel, you'll find that the rest falls into place. The advantage in Israel is you can live as a Jew anywhere. You don't have to live in Caulfield or South Caulfield or in the communities in Australia. So you're surrounded by Jews. You're surrounded by Jews anywhere. So you can really suit your aliyah to who you are.
For medical personnel, doctors, nurses, or any people interested in coming and living in Israel, is it very difficult to requalify and to integrate?
So the answer is no, it's not difficult at all. Less difficult for doctors actually than it is for nurses. And that's basically because of a great effort that has happened over the last few months. It's very, very new, which was a combined effort of the Health Ministry, the Scientific Council, the Israeli Medical Association, and Nefesh B'Nefesh, where basically Australia is now on what's called the green track. It's one of 7 countries where doctors' licensing is recognised. So you don't have to do an observership, you don't have to do any period, of trial. There's a checklist of what you need to fill out, what you need to make sure that you have in order to be recognised as a doctor in Israel. You basically need to have worked for 1 year in your field. And otherwise, it's quite a simple process. Nurses, it's a little bit harder. The nurses' licensing is actually not recognised, and they have to do an exam. But I know lots of nurses who've got through it and they've come out the other end and are working successfully.
Is there a great need for doctors?
There's a huge need for doctors in Israel at the moment for a number of different reasons, which was basically too long to go into in the scope of this podcast. But basically, we've one of the lowest doctor to patient ratios in the OECD. A lot of the doctors that are actually making up the numbers of licensed doctors are from the Russian Aliyah, and they're reaching retirement, already reached retirement. Unfortunately, there was a brain drain, and there's quite a lot of doctors who went to live overseas. So the numbers, even that low number, doesn't actually reflect the real number. And the other thing that we did is we dropped the number of doctors coming through the system here. 50% of doctors in Israel were trained overseas, and through a reform called Reform Chatziv, the half of those doctors are actually not going to be able to work those medical students are not going to be able to work in Israel anymore because these medical schools were substandard. So we've got more doctors leaving and less doctors coming through. There's a huge need for doctors of pretty much every field in Israel at the
I've heard
moment.
there's quite a lot of doctors from the Arab sector of Israel. Is that correct?
It's pretty proportional to the numbers in society, a little bit more. But a lot of those doctors from the Arab sector were the ones who were training overseas in hospitals that are no longer recognised. So I think the demographics are going to change a bit.
I wanted to ask you, you are a specialist in emergency medicine and emergency care. Obviously, Israel has experienced unprecedented needs for that sort of care due to the catastrophic war that we are involved in, and of course, the tragic events of 7th of October. Can you just tell me a little bit about where you were on the 7th of October and what your role was in the hospital that you were based in?
So I was in the 7th of October in my hospital in Assuta Ashdod, which is in the south of Israel. It's 30 kilometres from the northern border of Gaza. It was my shift. I didn't turn up because of the situation. I work on Saturdays and nights, basically, and this was one of my shifts. I got up at around 6:15 in the morning to the missile fire. We thought we were just under attack again. It was, I think, the 7th time since we opened the hospital 7 years ago that we were under heavy missile fire. So I went to work thinking along the way about getting ready for a mass casualty event in case we had a lot of injured from missile fire on the way. Had never been under such heavy missile fire, so figured that something more serious was going on. Basically, as soon as I came to the hospital, which was at 7 in the morning, I basically leapt into action to work out how are we going to empty out the emergency department, which was very full, even though it was a Saturday morning, because we don't have enough internal medicine beds, and get ready for a mass casualty event. And literally in those minutes, while I'm just trying to work out how we're going to logistically deal with this, I was getting fed some information on the social media from one of my doctors who hands it over for me, who's from the Arab, is Arab and is on the Arab social media. And he showed me pictures of basically of people who were dead on bus stops. Three people in the first picture, a young man in the second picture. And I thought, wow, the missiles are really hitting, that we're not managing with the Iron Dome
At this stage, you think it's incoming missiles. You don't know
missile.
of
I think it's
any
incoming
shooting
missiles.
or any
No,
other
but
terrorist activity.
but minutes later, and I can't tell you how many minutes because I have no concept of time from that day, he showed me a video of a soldier in uniform who was being pulled out of his car by his legs. He was slashed across the face. And he was being pulled out by terrorists with masked faces. And that's when we realised there was a terrorist invasion. But more than that, I didn't know. I also didn't have time to find out. We had a lot of doctors who'd self-mobilised who came to the hospital. We were milling with people. We got our first wounded at around 9-ish, who was a policewoman, a 26-year-old policewoman from Sderot, who'd been shot. And while we were dealing with her and preparing her for surgery, we heard that there was many more wounded coming in and called a mass casualty event. And from then onwards, we just had a constant influx of wounded, which were primarily not from missile fire, primarily from terrorist attacks. Many of them were security forces because we're just that much north. The streets were blocked off, the roads were blocked off, so the civilians couldn't make their way to us. We had several of them trickling in overnight who'd basically come from other hospitals where they were yet to be seen because they'd been waiting there for 12 hours because of, I'm talking with bullet wounds. Because of the overload. But most of the forces that we had during the mass casualty event were security forces. Terrible injuries, amputations, severe bullet wounds, blast injuries. The guns that the terrorists were using were Kalashnikovs, and Kalashnikov is a gun that causes a blast injury. So it's not you get a bullet wound going in and out; it actually blows a limb off. And we saw things that we hadn't never seen on that scale before. We obviously realised we were under war. It was a very it was extremely traumatic, obviously, but more in retrospect. At the time, we just were robotic. We've practiced for so many years to manage a mass casualty event because of our position, because we're so close to the border. We've been under missile fire so often. We actually do mass casualty drills every 3 months. I do them in the middle of the night. I get my team up, okay, let's have a mass casualty drill. So we are totally drilled. So every single person just basically stepped into place and did their job in exactly the way that we were meant to do it. What we
With
weren't
the amount
prepared
of
for,
injuries, do you have enough staff available?
yes. So we did, because a lot of people self-mobilised. And what you do in a case of a mass casualty event is you give them minimal care. What you do is you just do whatever procedures you need to do to save a life, and then you delay everything that can be delayed until later. For example, that first soldier who came in, she was shot in the face, and she had a bullet that was sitting right next to her eye on the right-hand side. And we had planned to operate on her immediately. And this was on Saturday morning. She was operated at midnight on Tuesday night. So what in a normal circumstance is extremely urgent becomes much less urgent because all you're doing is life-saving procedures. So when you limit your procedures to the life-saving procedures, you actually have enough hands on deck. And then you have to be very careful about how you prioritize to make sure that that nobody dies before you actually get to them. Thankfully, we did not lose it. We had 87 patients coming through, wounded, and everybody survived, including some about 26% who were really seriously wounded, and everybody survived. The hospital was phenomenal. Everybody really pulled together. What we weren't prepared for at all, and we didn't have any protocol for, was the emotional distress, the emotional trauma of the staff and of the patients. We had no protocol. We had never written how do we actually deal with the wounded who comes in and says, my whole family's been killed. All the soldiers who are with me are dead. How do you respond to them? How do you react? We had no idea. And how do you relate to yourselves? We never, how do you help the nurses and the doctors and all of your team who are going through such incredible trauma? So we had no idea at the time. We are since then. That's one of the fields that we have very much worked on. But at the time, we did what seemed to us which was right, which was just that's terrible, that's awful. What can I do for you? Since then, we've understood that that's exactly the wrong approach. You have to activate the people. You have to strengthen them and empower them, as opposed to treating them like these poor, terrible victims of trauma, which is what they are.
So when you
So it
say
was a very
empower them, because I think that's relevant to trauma all over the world, not just
absolutely,
to people on the
absolutely.
front line. Can you give any suggestions or ideas for maybe people who are just simply shocked? I've been speaking to a Holocaust survivor in Australia, and he just can't understand or he's so grief-stricken. He's lived safely since the Holocaust in Australia, felt safe, felt part of the community. And now he is just appalled at what he's seeing. He feels marginalized. He feels fearful for his grandchildren and children. What kind of advice can you give the diaspora Jews who are struggling with this as well?
So I think the one word is action. Right after October 7, I was actually interviewed by Harvard Medical School. They had sort of a podcast, really when all the anti-Semitic responses were coming out, and it was about resilience. And I actually had to look up the word resilience because I really didn't know what it meant. And there's all different forms of resilience, and all different ways that people have resilience, and one of them is action. And that was the one that I took on, and that's the one that most of the people in Israel and all of the Jews in the diaspora that are getting involved have taken on. And I think it's actually the right answer. I think it's action. The thing that makes you feel empowered is to act, not to sit here and hopelessly be victims, but to think, what can I do in my capacity to act? And everybody acts differently. You could act by preparing sandwiches and food for the soldiers. You can act by, people were acting by going down and folding the washing of the soldiers, or help, taking in the evacuees. There's all different types of ways of acting, but the way to respond is to act. A Holocaust survivor who experienced the terrible helplessness of the Holocaust should not feel helpless anymore. We have a country, we have a nation, we are strong, we can get through anything. Act, be a part of it in any way, shape or form, and I think you find that that's what gives you the strength.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I think we all need to hear that, the chizuk, the feeling of empowerment. It's very easy to slip into that feeling, especially in the diasporas, because you don't have an army and you don't have the police acting to protect you specifically. You feel very fearful and weakened by that. At least here, exactly the examples you mentioned. Make a sandwich, go to the border, help out, volunteer. Well, you can't do that in Sydney, Australia, or Melbourne, or any other part of the diaspora. You can do a lot, but maybe not
you have the
that.
same Jewish strength. You have the same Jewish inner strength, the same Jewish soul. You can do what needs to be done there. You can make sure that you're up to date with the information from Israel, not the false information that comes out in the media. You can get the answers. You can protest. You can strengthen yourselves within your own communities. You can strengthen your children. There's a lot that can be done within Australia as well. Just remember, we're very resilient people. I mean, who else other than the Jews and perhaps the Chinese have lasted throughout times? Only us. So obviously we have the inner strength no matter where we are, and we just have to draw on that and not let what's going on around us weaken us in any way, shape, or form.
After the atrocities that you've seen and continue to deal with, where does this incredible hopefulness and optimism come from?
It comes from everybody around me. It comes from every single person I come across. It comes from the people itself. We mentioned in the previous discussion that what I actually decided to do, I also needed to act after the war, was that about 5 days later, on October 12th in 2023, I received a phone call from a soldier, a doctor who was called up to the army basically, and was going into combat. And he said, look, I'm a doctor, but I have no tactical medicine training. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of us who've been caught up and we're not trained. Can you help? And because I'm emergency medicine, and also my other hat that I wear is education. I work very, very strongly in education. I thought that was my calling. Thank God somebody gave me something to do. This is somewhere I can act. And ever since then, my action has been to train all of the medical corps on the front line, both in the army, in the first responder units, and in communities. Basically, anybody who asks, it's been to train them. Now, in doing that, I have the resilience because I'm actually doing something. I'm not sitting back and watching. I'm actually being active. But I also have had the privilege of meeting so many extraordinary people. We've trained over 4,300 people. That is 4,300 extraordinary people.
Can you just
Soldiers of
explain what this
18.
means on the ground? Like, what is the training?
So basically what we're doing is we train them in tactical medicine. How you respond if you are on site and there's trauma, whether it's a missile attack or a penetration of terrorist, anything, basically any type of physical trauma, how you respond. Now, in trauma, it used to be called the golden hour. Say the first hour matters. If you save the patient in the hour, the patient will survive, and if you don't, they will die. We know that's not true. It's golden minutes. You have moments. You have minutes. You either stop the bleed, which will kill the patient within 5 minutes, or the patient dies. You either manage his airway or the patient has not enough oxygen supplied to his brain. You either you evacuate him and bring him to the operating theatre, or he's going to bleed internally. So what we're training all the teams in is tactical medicine. What happens when you're the first person on site, and what do you do? Now, the good news is that medicine has become so sophisticated, but tactical medicine has gone backwards. And what we've understood is that less is more, is that it's not the sophisticated, that intubating, putting a tube down a patient's throat or connecting him up to a mechanical ventilator that's going to save his life. It's actually the opposite. That's actually going to endanger his life. What's going to save his life is your own two hands, if you know exactly how to hold his airway and to keep it open. What's going to save his life if you know how to stop a bleed, which you also do with your own two hands, with very, very simple equipment. So we're teaching people how to save lives when they're the first person on site, how to save lives under threat, also when you're under danger, even if you're under fire, how to save lives and how to prepare that patient for evacuation in the minimum number of time. I'm talking minutes. We can get a patient whose life is saved, no matter how seriously injured he is, and ready for evacuation within under 4 minutes. We train them how to communicate with the helicopters or with the ambulances or whoever comes to evacuate them, to give them exactly within the 10 seconds evacuation communication of exactly what is the next step that absolutely needs to be done in order to keep the patient alive. So we train them in how to manage emotionally, both themselves and also to deal with emotional trauma that simultaneously with saving their life that the victim is under. And we've basically been delivering this training all around the country. So we set up an organisation which we call the Frontline Emergency Medicine, which is a reference to Ben Gurion's statement in 1947, where he said the whole country is a front and all the people are its army. And that's the way we see it. We know the whole country is a front. Syria, the Syrian border, the Lebanese border, the Jordanian border has been under threat and people don't even know about it, the Egyptian border, the Gaza, and of course the West Bank. So the whole country is a front. And all the people are now the doctors and the paramedics and the medics. And so we have to train ourselves. The distance, if we don't do that, if we don't treat them in those first 5 minutes, they won't make it to the hospitals. So we've been doing it in two areas. One is with the civilian population and the other one is with the army. Most of our training has actually been with Medical Corps and the Army. It's not that we're the only people training. There's lots of training going on, but there's just lots more that needs to be done. We add another aspect to it, which is why we're called in. And the aspect that we add is that we're all professionals in emergency medicine. We're not, young medics who've been taught how to teach. Who are excellent, by the way, at what they do, but we add in the experience. We add in the experience of seeing it from the other side and of really understanding the physiology and the pathophysiology behind it, but being able to bring it down to the level of the people who are working or the ones who are saving lives. So we're working on a number of different aspects with the Army, also training, helping train medical students who are basically going through who are going to become combat doctors, and helping them train them from the ground up. But we also train first responder units. We especially the outlying communities. We've been going, especially during when the north was under fire. We were going up north twice a week at least, to the outer settlements. And cities and towns in communities in the Golan, in the Galil, basically anybody who asked. The only people that we went to that didn't turn to us, that we turned to them, was the Druze community. Basically, our training is from word of mouth. People hear about us, they call us, and our decision was that we say yes to everybody. We've never said no. And the Druze weren't contacting us. There wasn't any word of mouth. So we contacted them several times. Unfortunately, there wasn't much interest until July the 28th last year, where they had the terrible tragedy with the missile attack and all the 12 children that were killed and the 47 that were injured. The day after, we contacted them again and we started
That's
a fight.
tragedy at Magdal Shams.
That's a tragedy in Major Shams. The next day, we got in contact with them again and we started a very intensive program with them. We helped them build a community collection centre, which is basically an underground car park, which since then has been functioning as a hospital. We helped them set it up, design it, equip it, staff it, plan it, work all the protocols. We trained their community staff, their doctors and their nurses, their social workers in trauma care. And then we ran with them a mass casualty event, basically with all of the relevant stakeholders, with the council, the city council, with the Yechidot Chilut, which are the search and rescue, with the ambulance services, MADA and other ambulance services, with the army, with the home front, basically with all of their teams. And what was so incredible about it was that we prepared an event with 50 wounded. And we asked them who could they bring as volunteers to be the wounded. And they brought the children, they brought the friends and even the siblings of those who were wounded and killed. And I said to them, isn't this too emotional? Isn't this too hard for them? They said, no, it's necessary. This is part of our resilience. We are showing that we act. It's that action. We are acting. We are not responding passively. We are not letting this happen again. We are acting. And they made these children up to look like victims of terror. It was extremely realistic. And we brought those children in as the wounded. And the response after it, the overwhelming response was, what we feel now is we feel that we feel like we're on the path to recovery. We feel that this was the first step on the path to recovery. We are not going to let this happen again. We are prepared. The mass casualty event took place in the centre of town, because that's where basically where the right next door to where the children were killed. Right next door, there's the field and there's the trauma area, the underground hospital. And so it was in full view of everybody. It was on a Friday morning, and their response, the head of the head of the city council, Dulan, he got up on TV and he said to them, "This is our response. We are not going to let this happen again. You all saw what action that we took." So that's basically what we're doing. We're taking action. We
You
get
think
a
lives could have
response.
been saved on that
100%,
on that
100%.
day?
Well, lives could have been saved, yes, 100%. But we also know from the training that we give the soldiers that it's the really little things that we're teaching. But they say, look, that I saved a life. I didn't delay evacuation. I knew how to stop the bleed. I knew how to prioritize. I knew what to do next. I activated my memory muscle, because that's what you have in time of stress. You don't think, you have to activate a memory muscle, so you have to be well trained. So I think it's been. I think it's important. It's still going on. We're still getting requests. I've got a training session south of the Dead Sea on Tuesday. I've got 2 training sessions right on the Lebanese border. Next week we've got training sessions ongoing. So there's obviously still a need.
Can you just tell me, how do you fund this? Is this a part of charity, or is this your own money? And where's this all coming
Oh,
from? It must be very expensive to
yes.
get medical personnel to run all over the country training people.
So it's a complete non-profit. We got the equipment and the support actually from Australians, from our Australian Friends of Medicine, which was Karen Fink. I don't know if you know, she's a radiologist in Australia, and her husband, Mark, and a couple of their friends, Debbie Clues and Jonathan Cohen. They contacted us a couple of weeks after the war, after the start of the war, and said, "What can we do to help?" And I said, "Well, listen, great timing. I just got asked for simulations. I've got no idea how I'm going to get the equipment." And they got together a huge response from friends in Australia, and basically set us up. That was basically for all of the equipment. Our time is free. We do it all on a totally voluntary basis. So every single time we're training, everybody's coming and basically giving of their own time. I've taken the last 5 months off of leave without pay in order to concentrate on the voluntary activity, because I think it's something it's basically where we need to put the emphasis at the moment. So our time is fully voluntary. The equipment has been donated, and that's how we've been going. To make it sustainable in the future, we're going to have to probably turn it into something sustainable. But as long as the urgent need is urgent, we just keep responding.
And I've seen some of the, I don't know what you call them. Are they dummies? What are they called in medical terms?
They're called task trainers or mannequins. So some of
Mannequins.
them are full dolls, and some of them are task trainers.
So specific parts of the body, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, depending on what you're training
I
on. Yeah,
saw a whole man, and I saw also a mannequin of a baby, a little girl, a young
and,
girl.
and a woman.
Unbelievably realistic, like
Yeah,
frightening. They even feel
yeah.
like human, like the flesh, it feels
Yeah,
real. The eyes look real. They really are extraordinary, and they must be extremely valuable.
they're valuable. They're very important. The realism is really, really important. It's incredible the difference when you use a plastic dummy that's got all these moving limbs but looks plastic and feels plastic, than when you use a 4-year-old child who feels like you're holding a real child in your hands, or a woman, adult woman who's shot and injured. People respond completely differently. They will talk to the dummies, to those mannequins. The way they carry them, the way they move them is completely different. So that's a really critical part of the training, is to make it as realistic as possible, because as I mentioned before, it's a memory muscle. All what you do in real life is you drop to the lowest level of your training. So the training has to be really accurate. It has to be really realistic, and that's what you'll do in real life.
Amazing. It's incredible, incredible work. And I will definitely, I would love to come and see you in action, because
With pleasure.
it's
Invited.
amazing to see this training going on. It's going to save hundreds and hundreds of lives, and I'm sure already has. I just wanted to ask you, as an Olah who's been in the country now, well, you're an Israeli now, been here many years. Do you have any regrets after everything you've been through? I mean, you've been through horrific trauma yourself, being the doctor there at the hospital on the 7th of October, along with, I think, all of Israel and all the Jewish people. We've been totally shocked, disgusted, traumatized, and shaken to the core. Do you have any regrets on making Aliyah?
None, not one. I never have had. The opposite. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be here and be part of things and to have the opportunity to actually do something, however little. Did I make a difference? I don't know, but I've certainly had the opportunity to. So I have never regretted living in Israel. There is a very difficult leaving one's family. I miss my parents and my family in Australia, but other than that, absolutely no regrets. This is the place to be. And there's just so much more that needs to be done. So much more that needs to be done.
And how do you feel about the future? Do you feel optimistic considering what you've seen, what we're going through, all the complexities of the political situation?
Yes, I feel optimistic because, again, I look at the resilience of the people. I think we've got an incredible nation. Nobody's ever managed to destroy us or get us down, and they never will. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. We're already starting the process of rehabilitation of the South and the North and the soldiers who've been so seriously injured. That's critical, but it's so important to be a part of it. We need to get all of the hostages out and home. We need to get all of the soldiers out and home. We need to strengthen our borders. We need to change our political party. There's a lot that needs to be done. But I'm very optimistic about it because I think we're people that does. I think we're, as I said, those who run towards, the people who are here, the people who are staying here, the people who are coming here, the people who are supporting us from afar, the people who are not giving up. We don't give up. We also can't give up because there's no alternative. We have to, if anything, that the diaspora does realise now is that we have to have a state of Israel and it has to be strong. So we don't really have a choice of giving up and saying, well, I'm just going to go and live in Thailand and live on the beach for the rest of my life. We really have to invest in our future, and there's a lot to do. And I think it's the action that makes you stronger. So no, I think the future. I think we hit rock bottom. We hit rock bottom on October 7 and since. Unquestionable. It just can't get worse. It can't get worse than that. I think we have proven that we're able to pick ourselves up. We've proven that we're able to unite and pick ourselves up, and we just have to keep doing this. So I'm very optimistic about the future.
Debra, thank you so much for your time. And if there's anybody in this country who's making a difference, it is you, 150%. Your work is just extraordinary, and your determination and energy are really inspirational. So thank you so much for speaking to me and speaking to our community, the Australian Jewish community. And we hope that you continue to go from strength to strength and do all this magical work that you're doing and achieving everything that you're capable of achieving.
Well, thank you. And thank you. Let me take the opportunity also to thank all the Australians for their support, because Australia is an extraordinarily supportive and strong and Zionistic community. And again, just to wish that all our hostages will come home safely, and refuah shlema to all of our soldiers.